Hey, what's up guys? This video is for the test review for sections 3.1, 3.3, 4.1 for Algebra 1. So we are going to talk about x and y intercepts, the slope, and we are also going to graph in slope formula, in the slope intercept form. So let's look at number 1. Here we want to determine if each equation is a linear function, and if it is, we want to know what are the x and the y intercept. So let's review how do we know it's linear. Looking at question number 1, we have 6xy minus 2y equals 12. First of all, in order to be linear, x and y cannot be side by side multiplying each other. So this one, right away, we know it's not going to be linear. So not linear. It's going to be a different graph or a different function, but it's not linear. So we don't have to find the x-intercepts. We do not have to find the y-intercepts. Number 2, you guys have 8x plus 3y equals negative 9 minus 4x. Well, if you guys look at the x and the y, they're not multiplying each other. And we do have an x on the other side, but the x is not on the bottom of a fraction. And x has an exponent of 1. So guess what? This right here is linear. Yes, it is. So I'm going to put a yes on the side. It is linear. So what that means is we can find the x and the y-intercept. So first, to find those x and y intercepts, let's get the standard form. So I'm going to get this x to the other side so I can have the x and the y on the same side of the equation. So I am going to add 4x to both sides. When I do that, I'm going to get 12x plus 3y equals negative 9, and you can cross this one out. Notice that still the x and the y are not multiplying each other. There's a plus in the middle, and this is the standard form. So when we have the standard form, all we have to do to find this x-intercept and the y-intercept, well, for the x-intercept, you guys are going to let y equal to 0. So I'm going to substitute a 0 into the y. So I'm going to write down the 12x here plus the 3, substitute a 0 into the y equals negative 9. So now you guys are going to solve for x. Now let me give you guys a tip. When you are going to multiply 0 times the 3, well, that's going to be 0, so you don't need it. So in a way, you guys can ignore this portion of the equation. So I'm just going to bring down the 12x equals negative 9. You divide by 12. This turns into 1. So x equals, and you guys can reduce the fraction, negative 3 over 4. So that is the actual x-intercept. The x-intercept is negative 3 over 4. If on the test they actually have a order pair, well, your x-intercept will be negative 3 over 4 comma 0. So either one is correct. Now they're not going to give you guys both answers at the same time. They're either going to give you guys this format or this format, but we know what is the x-intercept. Now we need to find the y-intercept. For the y-intercept, well, you guys are going to let x equal to 0. I'm going to put here, let x equal to 0. So I'm going to go back to the equation. Notice here's the x right there. So I am going to put 12 times 0 plus 3y equals negative 9. Again, when you guys multiply by 0, you can kind of ignore this portion because that's going to be 0. So 3y equals negative 9, divide by 3. So y equals negative 3. So that is the y-intercept. Or as a point, you can say it's 0 comma negative 3. So either one is correct. Just make sure you guys understand. You can have a point like this, or you just have the y-intercept, y equals negative 3. For number 3, you guys have fractions. Remember that a linear function cannot have the x on the bottom. So I'm checking the x, and the x is not on the bottom. It's on the top. So that's good. X has an exponent of 1. That means linear. And x and y are not multiplying each other. There's a minus in between. So this one, it is a linear function. I'm going to put here, yes, it is linear. But the standard form, you cannot have fractions. So I'm going to get rid of the fractions. I'm going to look at the denominators, 3 and 5. I'm going to multiply everything by the lowest common denominator, which is 15. And I'm going to put here LCD, so you guys know that is the lowest common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this by 15 and the other side by 15. So when you guys simplify, I'm going to go back to the first fraction. 3 goes into 15 5 times. So I'm going to multiply the 5 times the x, and that's going to be 5x. Then you guys simplify the second fraction. 5 goes into the 15 3 times, and I'm going to multiply the negative y. There's a minus, so that's a negative y times 3. That is a minus 3y equals, and the other side, 1 times 15 is 15. So that is the standard form. X and y are on the same side, and they're not multiplying each other. Now, for the x-intercept, you guys are going to let y equal to 0. But remember that I mentioned to you that if you substitute a 0 into the y, you can kind of ignore this portion of the equation. So you can do that. You can ignore it, and you guys can bring down the 5x equals 15. Notice, I am ignoring the y because y is going to be 0. So when you multiply those two numbers, it will equal to 0. So the only thing you have to do is divide by 5 and solve for x. So x equals 3. Or you can say 3, 0. So you have a point, or you have the x-intercept, x equals 3. For the y-intercept, well, now you guys are going to let x equal to 0. And since you substitute a 0 into the x, this is going to equal to 0 when you multiply. So you guys can ignore that one, okay? Ignore this portion. But I'm going to keep the minus 3y equals 15. Careful with the sign because 3 is negative. So you guys have to keep the minus 3, y equals 15. Divide by negative 3, and we get a y-intercept of negative 5. So as a point, you guys can say it's 0, negative 5, or you can say y equals negative 5. So the line, when you guys graph this line, is going to cross the x-axis at positive 3, and it's going to cross the y-axis at negative 5. For the next section of the review, you guys have different graphs, and we want to find the slope of those following lines. Okay, so I'm going to I'm going to show you guys a positive slope, a negative slope, and then I'll talk about undefined and 0 slope. So let's look at this one first. This graph right here, you guys have a line going uphill from left to right. So it's going to go up like a mountain. So that means we have a positive slope. So when you guys find the slope, you need the rise and the run. So let me just write this down on the bottom. My slope, m, that's the variable we use for slope. M equals rise over run. So I'm going to count how many steps I go up from one point and to the right to the second point. You might go down, but in this case, I rise, I go up 1, and I go to the right. So let me just draw the line. So here's up and to the right. So I go up 1 and I go to the right 1, 2, 3 steps. So I'm going to put run is 3. So when you guys have your slope, rise is 1 and the run is 3. So my slope is 1/3. Now the next graph, you guys see the line going downhill like a mountain. It's going down, so that means your slope is going to be negative. The type of slope is negative. I'm going to use my rise over run again because we have a graph. Every time you guys have a graph, we use the rise and the run to find the slope. So from one point, I'm going to go from here. Notice from left to right, this is the first point, and I need to go down and to the right to get to the second point. So down, your rise, if it's down, that's going to be negative. And then you guys go to the right and when you guys go to the right, that's going to be positive. So let me check how many steps I go down. From the point, 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be -3 rise, and to the right, I go from here, I turn to the right, 1, 2 steps. So I have a +2 because I went to the right. So my rise will be -3 and the run will be 2. So the slope is -3 over 2. The next two graphs are, you can say, special slopes, because all you have to know is the difference between vertical and horizontal. So this line here, I'm looking at this graph, has a vertical line. Doesn't matter where the line is at, we want to know what is the slope. So this one, the slope, when you guys have a vertical, let me write down the word vertical, your slope will be undefined. Any vertical line, the slope is undefined. We don't know what is the slope. Mathematically, we cannot find the slope of a vertical line. Now, if you guys see an horizontal line, like the next graph, horizontal means sideways from left to right. Doesn't matter where the line is at, but if the line is horizontal, then your slope will be 0. This one actually has a number. So the value is nothing. We know 0 is nothing, but we know the slope is 0. So horizontal, sideways, slope is 0. If it's vertical, up and down, it means the slope is undefined. So number 7, you are looking for the slope. It says find the slope of the line passing through those 2 points, but notice that we don't have the graph. So we're not going to use the rise and the run. What we are going to use is the slope formula. And the slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So you guys are going to label your points. So my first point, 5, 2, is x1, y1. The second point is x2, y2. So to find the slope, I'm going to substitute. So m equals y2 is -6 minus y1 is 2. And on the bottom, x2 is 6 minus x1 is 5. You guys are going to simplify. So the top of the fraction, -6 minus 2 is -8. And the bottom, 6 minus 5 is 1. You guys can simplify. -8 divided by 1 will be -8. So that is the slope of the line that passes through those 2 points. Number 8, same thing. You guys are going to use the formula. So I'm going to label my points. x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to have m equals y2 is 9 minus y1 is 4 divided by x2 is -3 minus, but you guys notice that x1 is also negative. So when you guys have x1 or y1 to be negative, or whatever number you guys have up here negative, you must use parentheses because we already have a minus in the formula. So don't forget the parentheses, -3. We know that double negatives here on the bottom, that's going to turn positive. So let me just go back to the top first. 9 minus 4 is 5. But the bottom, you guys will have -3 plus 3. So when you guys simplify, this is going to equal 5 over 0. -3 plus 3 is 0. Notice that the 0, we do have a 0 on the bottom of the fraction. We cannot divide by 0. So that means mathematically we cannot do that. So m will be, your slope will be undefined. Every time you guys have a 0 on the bottom of the fraction, is undefined. The slope is undefined. Same thing with number 9. I'm going to find the slope. So I label the points x1, y1, x2, y2. So the slope formula, y2 is 7 minus y1 is 7 divided by x2 is -5 minus x1 is negative. So make sure you guys use parentheses, -2. So the bottom, we do have double negatives, so we know that's going to turn positive. But if you guys notice on the top, 7 minus 7, 0. And on the bottom, you guys have -5 plus 2, which equals 0 over -3. This, guys, has a 0 on the top of the fraction. We can, yes, we can divide 0 by a number other than 0. We cannot divide by 0, but if you have other than 0 on the bottom, 0 divided by other number than 0, the answer will be 0. We know mathematically this slope will equal 0. And that is when the 0 is on the top of the fraction. For the next section, we want to find the x and the y-intercept. So we do have a line here, but we want to know where the line is crossing the x-axis and the y-axis. Now there's a problem here because the graph doesn't have the line all the way to the x and the y-axis, so we have to find the actual points. We can use the slope. If you guys follow the pattern, I'm going to use the slope. So notice from this point, I go up 2 and 1 to the right. So I use rise over run. I can find more points. So I go up 2, 1 to the right. I'm going to do that again. 1, 2, 1 to the right. There's my next point. I'm going to do that again. I go up 2, 1 to the right. This is my next point. I'll do one more. I can go up 2, 1, 2, 1 to the right, and you guys have another point. So if you guys extend the line, you go all the way up. Now we can see where the line crosses the x and the y axis. So my x axis or my x-intercept right here. That is your x-intercept. So x is going to equal, I'm just looking at from the origin, -1. So just make sure that you guys look where the line crosses the x-axis. So my x-axis right here will be -1. And that's going to be, let me just make sure this looks like a 1 here. So -1 right there. So that is the x-intercept. The y-intercept, well, is this one. That is the y-intercept. So my y-intercept will equal, from the origin, it's going to go up 1, 2 steps. So it is +2. So that is my y-intercept. So number 11, you guys have 2 points and a given slope. So m equals 1/4. But notice that one of the numbers in one point is missing. So we want to find r. So these 2 points will give you guys a slope of 1/4. Now for this example, we're going to use the slope formula. So I'm going to write down the slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. I'm going to label my points x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to substitute what I know. I know what is the value of m is 1/4. So m, you guys will substitute 1/4, 1/4. On the other side, y2 is 5 minus y1 is 3 over x2 is r minus and x1 is negative. So I need parentheses, -4. I need to turn that into positive and I need to simplify the top of the fraction. So I have 1/4 equals, on the top 5 minus 3 is 2, and on the bottom r plus 4. You guys turn those double negatives into positive. I have a proportion. I can solve for r if I cross multiply. So first I'm going to cross multiply this number 1 times r minus 4. I ran out of space, so I'm going to do the work on this side, okay? On this right side, the white space. So I'm going to multiply 1 times r plus 4 equals, and then I'm going to multiply 4 times the number across, 4 times the 2. When you guys go back, if you guys substitute 1, anything multiplied by 1 is not going to change, okay? If it's +1, nothing's going to change. So r plus 4 will remain the same. R plus 4. On the other side, 4 times 2 is 8. Now you don't have fractions and you can solve. So I am going to subtract 4 from both sides. Cancels. So r equals 8 minus 4 is 4. So that is the value of r. So the next section says write an equation of the line in slope intercept form. Very important that you guys know what form they are asking. So it says here slope intercept form. What is the slope intercept form? We need y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. So I'll do number 13. Number 13, the slope is 1/5. M is your slope. So you just substitute y equals 1 over 5x, and B is positive 4. That's the y-intercept. B will be your y-intercept. So you just put a plus 4. That's it. This is your slope-intercept form. Y is by itself, and you guys have the slope and the y-intercept. If you guys look at number 12, the slope is positive, but the y-intercept is negative. So you guys have to be careful with the signs. You guys start with the y equals. We want the slope-intercept form. My slope is going to be 2 over 3x. And since my y-intercept is negative, you guys put minus 5. I know the formula has a plus b, but never write the plus and the minus at the same time. No, you guys have to know if it's positive or negative. So in this case, the y-intercept is negative, so you guys have a minus 5. So this is the slope-intercept form. Next, it says, write an equation in slope-intercept form for each graph shown below. So we are using the slope-intercept form. I'm going to show you guys a positive slope, and then I'll do one with a negative slope. So let's look at this graph first. I know, like I said, we know that it is going uphill, so my slope has to be positive. But it's a lot easier if you guys start with the y-intercept. So let me just write down the slope-intercept form before I forget. Y equals mx plus b. So b is your y-intercept. Your y-intercept is right here. This is where the line crosses the y-axis. So the y-axis is here. There's the line crossing the y-axis. So this point is b, and that is positive 3. From the origin, it goes up 1, 2, 3. So that's b. I know what is the value of b. Next, I need to find the slope. Since we have a graph, we need to use the rise and the run. So I need to know from one point, and I'm looking at this first point on the left side of the line, how to go from here all the way to the second point. So I'm going to rise, I'm going to go up, and then I'm going to go to the right. So let me count how many steps I go up. 1, 2, 3 steps. So we go up 3, and to the right 1, 2. So the run is 2. So my slope is 3 over 2. Now you guys put everything together. We have the slope, we have the y-intercept. So my equation, y equals 3 over 2. That's the slope. X, don't forget the x. And b is positive, so we have plus 3. The next graph, the line is going downhill. So first, I know my slope has to be negative. But like I said, it's a lot easier if you start with the y-intercept. So the line crosses the y-axis at this point, right there. So b is going to equal, let's go ahead and look at the slope. Not the slope, the y-intercept. So from the origin, I go down 1, 2. So the y-intercept is negative 2. Be careful with that sign. Then the slope, well, I'm going to go on the left side, from the left side to the right side. So from this point, I need to go down and to the right. That's how I get from one point to the other point. So down and to the right. So let's count how many steps I go down. From the point, 1, 2. So that would be negative 2. And to the right, 1, 2, 3. So 3, run. So my slope, let me just move the graph a little bit to the left. M is going to equal rise over run. So my slope is negative 2. That's the rise. And the run is 3. So when you guys put everything together, y equals the slope, negative 3. Sorry, not negative 3. Negative 2 over 3. X. And the y-intercept is negative. So we're going to use a minus 2. And this is the equation of the graph in slope-intercept form. So the next section, the bottom section of this test review, you guys need to graph the linear equations or linear functions. So here they don't give us any equation, but they say the slope is negative 6 over 5 and the y-intercept is positive 4. So when you guys graph, the first step is you need to graph the y-intercept. So step number 1, graph the y-intercept. So y-intercept is positive 4. So I'm going to go up from the origin. 1, 2, 3, 4. I make a point right here. Now I'm going to use the slope, -6/5, to find a second point. Now notice that the negative is on the left side of the fraction. So if you're not sure which number is negative, I want you guys to take the negative to the top of the fraction, the numerator. Always do that so you don't get confused. So this negative, just take it to the top, and the bottom will be positive. So I'm going to rewrite the slope over here. M equals -6/5. So -6 is the rise, 5 is the run. So from the y-intercept, do not go back to the origin. From this point, I'm going to go down 6 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I go to the right. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I make a second point right there. So now you guys just connect the points. You just need 2. You can make more, but 2 points is enough. So you guys connect the points, you make your line. Don't forget to use arrowheads because lines, they do go to infinity, positive infinity, negative infinity. So that is the graph of the equation of the line. Now this one, we have 3y equals -2x plus 9. We do have an equation. Notice the y is not by itself. I want you guys to use the slope-intercept form to graph the lines. So let's get the y by itself first, and then we can find the slope and the y-intercept. So I am going to divide by 3 to get y by itself, and whatever you do to one side, you do it to the other side. So this turns into 1. Y equals this fraction, -2/3. You cannot reduce, so you keep it as -2/3. X and 9 divided by 3. Yes, you can reduce. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So my slope is the number with the x. So we have a -2/3. So we have a negative slope. And the y-intercept is your constant, the number with no x. So +3. So you always start with the y-intercept. This is step number 1. So step number 1, I'm going to graph it. I'm just going to go to the +3. So I make a point right here. So that's +3. 1, 2, 3, up from the origin. Step number 2, you guys use the slope to find a second point. It is a negative, so I'm going to go down 2 and 3 to the right. So from the y-intercept, I go down 1, 2, and 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. And I make a second point right there. Now, you guys connect the points. Make sure you guys use arrowheads because lines, they do go to infinity. So here's my line. Arrowheads right here and right here. And that is the graph of the equation. Now this one, you guys have the x and the y on the same side. So this is already in standard form. Standard form, you guys can use the x-intercept and the y-intercept because this is already standard form. So we have x and y on the same side and the constant on the other side. Another option you guys have is you can use the slope-intercept form. So you guys can get the y by itself and find the slope and the y-intercept. I'm going to show you guys the slope-intercept form. I'm going to use the slope and the y-intercept. So I need this by itself. I'm going to subtract -4x from both sides because I need to get that x by itself. I mean the y by itself. So +2y equals -4x plus 4. Notice these are not like terms, so do not combine. Then you guys are going to divide by 2. Whatever you do to one side, you do it to the other side. So this turns into 1. So we get y equals, you guys can reduce this, -4/2, that's -2x, plus 4/2 is 2. Okay, so we have y by itself. My slope is -2, the one with the x. But I need a fraction. The slope has a rise and the run. So I'm going to make it a fraction. You put a 1 under the -2. B is the constant. So that's a +2. So my first step, you use the Y-intercept. So positive 2 is right here on the graph. Then I go down the slope, negative 2, down 2, and 1 to the right. So from the Y-intercept, 1, 2, 1 to the right. And you guys make a second point. And like I said, you guys can make more points, but you just need 2 points. You guys connect and make sure you guys use arrowheads, because your line will go to infinity, positive infinity and negative infinity. So the last two I want to talk about is when you guys are missing a variable. So let's look at the one on the left side. Y equals negative 4. You are missing the x. So that means, guys, when you are missing the x, your line will be horizontal. You just need to know it is going to be horizontal. So when it is horizontal, on the y-axis, you have a y, you're going to go to negative 4. So when you graph it, you guys go to negative 4. 1, 2, 3, negative 4 is right there. And you guys make an horizontal, sideways, from left to right. So I'm making my line from left to right. And that is the graph. That's it. You just need to remember that it is horizontal. The one on the right side, x equals 3, you are missing the y. So when you guys are missing the y, your line will be vertical. Vertical means up and down. So on the x-axis, you guys have the x here. So on the x-axis, you guys go to the positive 3. So positive 1, 2, 3 is right here. And you guys make your vertical up and down, vertical line. And that is your graph. Don't forget the arrowheads. You guys have lines going to positive infinity, negative infinity. So this concludes my video. Make sure you guys practice. We do have a test. So make sure you guys practice, and I'll see you guys later.